I just want to express to you that the time is short. Whether we stall here at horizontal resistance or go a little bit higher, the time is short. The Bitcoin trend is bullish. We saw that right after we formed the bottom, and then shortly thereafter, we went into a risk-on environment. But Bitcoin is forming a lot of divergences, like with the RSI and divergences on the intraday charts. Here, risk-on isn't moving to a new low. It is also diverging. It's got a higher low, and Bitcoin's moving to a higher high. This is likely us that the rally is either coming to a conclusion at horizontal resistance or a little bit higher. Start and get. Whoops, my chart just went blank. I had to pause the video for a second. I don't know if it cut off a little bit, but anyways, right now, Bitcoin is a risk-on environment. It's moved to new highs. We're not seeing risk-on move to new lows. It is also forming a divergence, suggesting that we're going to see a reversal either here or at a little bit higher levels, the levels I've been talking about in this video and in my last update. I'll be clear, I'm expecting a reversal to pull back and get minor wave 2, but this is giving you a warning sign that, hey, the rally could be coming to a conclusion in the near future. I'll be watching to see, do my signals all start turning back to bearish? Here we are at horizontal resistance. Horizontal resistance, we moved just slightly above it. Still could try to reach this trend line. Here we had I stall out, little topping tails, and then we ended up still going higher with inauguration day. Consolidated before I went sideways there. We're getting the sell-off over here. Same thing. Again, we tried to go higher here, had some volatility, and then we still ended up going higher. So it's still possible we reach this level or a little bit higher. If we exclude the shadows here, we could still go a little higher to the 110, 111,000. Try to go to the other trend line closer to 113, 112, 113,000. If we get a topping tail, again, we need to see confirmation. Signals did a very, very good job. Again, they're still bullish here, looking for clues for a reversal. Do we get it here at horizontal resistance, or did we go a little bit higher? But again, I think the rally that we correctly called, my signals correctly called the day of the bottom, signals correctly predicted the rally. I think it's going to come to a conclusion in the not too distant future, or maybe today if we get a topping tail and we start to get a reversal. I'm very open-minded. We're in a topping process. Bullish. I think we get the pullback and then we go much, much higher. Now, right now we have a possible doji. Again, we still have quite a bit of time before the close. We have several hours before the close, so I'll be watching that. We actually had a topping signal earlier in the session at lower levels. Whether we do that by the close or not, we'll see. You could still get a topping signal like we got over here. Got a topping tail and a topping signal, and we still ended up going higher before we got the reversal. See the little black bar there? That is the reversal bar. Here we got the bottoming signals. The reversal bars formed at the same time. Little black bars there, and then it was followed by the blue, and that's what we've had. Had a couple of attempts to reverse here, but it only gave us sideways moves here. Here we had a short-term top and a sideways move. There was no confirmed reversal with the close below the level and a follow-through. We got a close below it, but we went sideways. There was no follow-through. Signals remained bullish. And we got a topping signal here and over here. We still ended up going higher. We got the rally with inauguration day right after that signal and reversal bar, another topping tail, and then we got a reversal bar. This time it played out. We see something like that. And that's why I keep saying we still may go to the trend line from these previous peaks right here towards 110, 111,000. If we exclude the shadows, including the shadows, you can go towards 113,000. If we close weak, maybe we get a topping signal here. Maybe that plays out immediately, as we had happen with our bottoming signal, but maybe we buy a little bit more time like we did over at these peaks over here. Something worth watching. Signals did an absolutely outstanding job in calling the bottom. I'm sure going to do an outstanding job of calling the top. And again, the session's still going on. Have to see if we get a topping signal today or in the next few days. Did try it earlier in the session, but it has gone away at least for now. So again, we won't have the final bar until our close a few hours from now. Lo and behold, as I'm making the video right here, right now, there it is. Whoop, it went away. See, it's depend on the close. There it is. And even if we get it, we still might push higher like we did over here and like we did over here. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it marks an immediate reversal. Other times it doesn't. We got a little warning of a top right here. With this bar, we ended up going a little bit higher, but still corrected. So again, I'll be watching to see how we close. Don't rule out that we don't go a little bit higher. I warned you in my last update that Bitcoin was going to go reach new highs. It is now doing that. 3 levels I'm really watching on Bitcoin. I talked about in my last video. Do we at these trend lines right here for the upper boundary of the rising wedge? the IBIT ETF slammed into that trend line earlier today. Bitcoin's reaching it, and that's taking us just above the horizontal resistance. Do we get a massive inverse head and shoulders pattern that's a horizontal line? If we end up going higher and overthrowing this upper boundary on IBIT and with Bitcoin in the 4-hour time frame, the upper boundary of the rising wedges, then we could go higher. I talked about this in my last video in great length and detail. Going to show you the trend lines I'm watching, but right now just know we're slamming into the trend line I warned you. I told you we were going to go up to this trend line. We could stall there. As with rising wedge patterns, you get an overthrow. If we do that, then maybe we go to some of those other trend lines in the daily time frame. But again, here, this takes us to a new high. Bitcoin just moved slightly higher, but it's at that horizontal resistance area as we hit this trend line. So that's what I'm watching. But this is the IBIT ETF. Again, I told you we were going to firm up on the MACD and come up here, form a diversion. So same thing with the RSI. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Go higher. We've reached my first objective target, which was this trend line on IBIT and the trend line on Bitcoin. That was the IBIT 60-minute chart. Here's the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. And again, the rally may not be done, but we're hitting our first objective target, upper boundary of the rising wedge. Now here, I've excluded the shadow, taken it from this peak right here, and excluded the shadow right here, and we're slamming right into that trend line. If we include the shadow, we go a little bit higher, and we're just under that level. Right now, Bitcoin has several hours before the close, so we'll be watching. Do we get a topping tail and the rally fails, and we start to reverse, and that's it, at horizontal resistance and these trend lines, or do we try to overthrow these levels and end up going, higher towards some of the trend lines that I've talked about in my last update in the daily time frame? And the thing I'm watching for here is, okay, we had this divergence, this pullback, we formed a larger divergence right here, and now we've got an even larger, we're making another lower high. Do you see this? We're forming this multiple point divergence as we're pushing into these highs. Bitcoin be topping here or shortly thereafter, just a little bit higher. Now we're reaching our first objective target, which is these trend lines in these intraday timeframes with IBIT and Bitcoin. Again, I think you could still push higher. I'll be watching for the MACD to roll over. Whether we get that as a reversal here or whether we push a little bit higher and have it happen, we'll be watching. We could see another push higher, though, because look at right here. We've got this peak on the RSI. We're turning down. We could pull back here and then turn back up and even overthrow this area and go to the 110 to 113,000 area that I talked about in my last update. If you form a little divergence here, we did over here. We had a peak here and we pulled back and then we inched higher and then we peaked out. We corrected with a triangle, a sideways move. Same thing over here. We had a peak right here. Eventually we pushed higher and then even higher, forming a larger divergence. We could see something like that here where we can go back up and even develop a larger divergence, but a multiple point divergence is telling us, hey, we're probably getting close to a top or forming a top, one or the other. Be watching this MACD closely. I think when it rolls over, I think that's going to suggest it's done. So do we terminate the rally here at these trend lines of our rising wedges, or do we end up overthrowing them? Do we end up overthrowing them? And either scenario is really possible. I wanted to show you these trend lines on IBIT and the Bitcoin ETF. And here, again, we're hitting the trend line, excluding the shadows. We may go up to it or even overthrow this area. If we're doing this, we're inching above the January high, just by a few $100s above that. We're still at 109,000, but we did move to a new intraday high. Same thing here with IBIT. Again, I'll be watching for the MACD to roll over. Do we get a diversion here? Do we end up overthrowing this level? But I've talked about IBIT in the last couple of videos. Again, just slamming right into that trend line, just beautifully. Look at that. Whether we peak here or go a little bit higher, I think you're going to get this ABC corrective move that will eventually give us a bigger pullback. Going to get a false breakout either here or at a little bit higher levels. Watching, is it done here hitting these trend lines, or do we go a little bit higher? Now, Bitcoin was up sharply, pushing up to a new high. We're giving back that rally at the moment. We still have several hours before the close, so we'll be watching to see how we close out. But I talked about, again, the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders. You know, we talked about a possible horizontal neckline, which again, you just stall in this area here, slightly higher, but a failed breakout. We go up towards the highs, these highs pointing to the next high up here, a little bit higher. Horizontal trend line is right at that. I told you we could overthrow this January peak, but right above that area is that upper boundary of the rising wedge on Bitcoin to reach it. But as you saw with the excluding the shadow with that dotted line, we did reach it, and IBIT reached it. The move done here with the horizontal neckline, and we pull back and we get a right shoulder, or do we up a little higher? We can exclude the shadows here. We can go up a little bit higher, or do we again hit the trend line, these highs pointing to possibly the next high? Again, this is all in the 110 to 113,000 area. Right here, the horizontal level is again, we're just inching above the January top. But could the narrative be that, oh, now we're going to get, by the bears, that we're going to get this triple top right here or at a little bit higher levels? So again, going to be watching to see if we stall right here or if we stall a little bit higher. And again, I draw on these different scenarios. One is that we just stall here immediately. The other is that we go up a little bit higher to some of these other trend lines right here. So right now, possible horizontal trend line in play if we end up getting a topping tail right here. Remember, I've talked about the divergences are developing here. You have it here on the RSI. You have it developing on the 4-hour chart we've looked at. We have it developing here on the MACD. Stochastics trying to roll back over with our sell-off here, and MACD has this divergence here in the most recent price action that's, again, under construction. So, again, it could be done at horizontal resistance right here, right now. We had a rally. Bitcoin gave it back. Again, the session's not done yet, and we still may try to rally further. Don't forget, we got this crypto conference, this Bitcoin conference next week. Get these conferences, more often than not, they're sell the news events. Of a hype going into them. Now, maybe Bitcoin peaks right here and now, and we begin to sell off, and that bigger sell-off surrounding that conference, or again, we could still flirt with these trend lines right here. Remember, I talked about the 50 coming up here to the 200, about to get a golden cross. Could it be we get the golden cross and it marks a top here now, just ahead of it doing it, or with it if we end up getting a golden cross and push into one of these other trend lines? Here I have the trend line, these highs going into the 113,000 area. The trend line, excluding those shadows a little bit, is pointing again to the 110, 111,000 area. The horizontal neckline, if we stall right here, right now, at the 109,000 January high, this dotted red line right here, this horizontal level, we've just inched just a few $100s above that level, and we're stalling there at the moment right now. Now, we could still reach these other levels, but if we start a reversal, then maybe that's all she wrote. Could the golden cross mark a top either here or at a little bit higher levels as the death cross marked the bottom down here? I told you these death crosses often mark bottoms. It did the last couple of times in this entire advance off of our bottom at 15,000. We've had a couple of death crosses and they've marked bottoms. Now this one did. Now we're up about 40, I believe it's about 47% now. At some point we're going to get a pullback, and maybe that's here at horizontal resistance. Maybe it's a little bit higher at some of these trend lines, but this horizontal resistance right here, this is at the upper boundary of the rising wedge. Now, if we exclude the shadows, as we saw in the 4-hour chart, we're hitting it right now. But if we include the shadow, then we're just directly underneath it. So again, we could still flirt with this area, but you've got a rising wedge going into the January high, going into resistance. Again, we're likely going to see the rising wedge eventually break down, maybe get a reversal bar today or in the next few days as we go closer towards the Bitcoin conference. We'll be looking to see if we get a top. Maybe this is it, maybe it's not. We'll be watching for clues. Signals are still bullish right now, but we're getting divergences in the daily time frame, on the 60-minute chart there of IBIT, on the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin, and we're hitting the trend line that I was looking at on IBIT and hitting the upper boundary of the trend line, excluding the shadows there on Bitcoin in that 4-hour time frame. I think the time is short, and we could see a peak today or in the next few days. Told you again, we were going to go up to the 105,000 area. When we got there, I revised that, and I told you we were going to go make new highs now. Now doing that, we'll see if it completes here. Even if we get a topping tail, remember, you got to have confirmation to that. If this topping tail, if we get it by the end of the session, we're still looking for a top in this area, either at this horizontal resistance or some of these trend lines right here. But I think you're going to get this inverse head and shoulders pattern. Moving to a new high here earlier today, and I heard all over social media, Bitcoin's breaking out, here we go. End up going higher, it's going to get only louder. They're going to be screaming, here we go. You know, they weren't bullish down here when my signals called the day of the bottom. But you get this breakout here, and I believe it's going to be a false breakout, either here or at a little bit higher levels. You get a breakout here, and here we go, it's a breakout. They get super bullish. They love to buy tops. They pile in at the tops, and they sell the bottoms. It's absolutely incredible. Extremely bullish at the tops and very, very bearish at the bottoms. Again, I'm a trader. I really don't care which way Bitcoin goes. I trade it back and forth. I'm bullish. I called my signals correctly, called the bottom. And at some point, we're going to get a pullback, get a higher low. That'll be the next opportunity of Bitcoin, and then we're going to really, really get a much, much bigger rally. And I think that we're completing or wrapping up, or will soon wrap up, one or the other, wave one here, and I think we'll get a wave two pullback, and I think it'll be this right shoulder. So I think you're forming a massive inverse head and shoulders pattern. The question now is, do we stall at the trend lines currently at the upper boundary, those rising wedges that we're reaching, and this horizontal resistance area from the January high? Even have the December peak over here at 108,000. This is like some serious resistance right here, or a little bit higher levels. Stall here or at a little bit higher levels. Right here, this horizontal area is where the upper boundary of our rising wedges are on those intraday charts. Watching to see, do we end up with the topping tail? We had a rally and it fizzled out. Professional money is now starting to sell. And we may just do what we did over here. Remember, in December, we got the peak. January, we just moved slightly above that level. We went from 108,000 to 109,000, just a little bit higher, just a few $100s higher, and that was it. Do we see something like that right here? Do we just go slightly above the January high now and do it again and again? End up seeing the rally stall out sooner rather than later, just inching just above that area. We'll see how it plays out. It can play out a couple of different ways. Again, trader, I look at support and resistance levels. Yes, my signals correctly predicted the day of the bottom. My signals correctly predicted this rally. Creates a pullback to accumulate even more Bitcoin. It's going to be the next opportunity down in here. Maybe that's in the the low 90s. Maybe that is in the high 80s. We could go back all the way and again to the double bottom confirmation line. get a deeper pullback. That's certainly possible. The January low over here, this was support previously. We broke it. It was resistance. Now it's become support again. This 88,500 area. So again, we could pull back to that level or above that level. You can exclude some shadows over here, and maybe you go into the into the low 90s there. Certainly possible, but I think you're going to eventually head back towards your 50 and your 200. The question is, are we going to peak right here now, or go a little bit higher peak? Whichever way it plays out, eventually I think you get your pullback here. So we'll be watching. Now I think we're forming this massive inverse head and shoulders, and if we stall here at the 109,000 area, well then you're looking at a $35,000 move, the measurement from the high to the low of the pattern, about $35,000. You're looking at a target of around 144,000. If we go a little bit higher, then maybe it gets us closer to a minimum objective target of 150,000 for Bitcoin. But I do think you're likely going to form this minor wave 2. I think you're going to get an ABC move for a pullback whenever this move finishes, and it could be finished today. It could finish later this week or on into early next week, but I think you're going to see this move finish. Now, we've seen the rally sell-off rally earlier in the session, and then we began to see some weakness on smaller time frame intraday charts, and that gave us a sell-off. Actually, do we close weak or do we close strong? I told you we could see a top here surrounding these trend lines right here. IBIT ETF, Bitcoin, same thing, excluding the shadows. Just blow right past these trend lines. That's certainly possible, and go to some of the resistance levels I've been talking about in the daily time frame in this video, my last video. I told you, again, this is where I was looking to sell the upper boundary of these rising wedges. Bitcoin didn't quite reach it, but it did reach it, excluding the shadow. Reach it here with IBIT, Bitcoin ETF. We may end up blowing right past these levels. Certainly possible. This is where I was looking to sell. So I've reduced my Bitcoin swing trade by 3/4. Taken 75% of it off the table. Still have 1/4% of my position. I have exposure through Bitcoin, Bitcoin ETF, Bitcoin futures, and Bitcoin itself. Position, I'm going to ignore the short-term price fluctuations, even though I think one is going to happen soon, and I'm holding that position for several months going into the summer or the fall. I also do shorter-term swing moves. I accumulated my current position down at the double bottom lows, selling on my swing trade position, and I did that with both my core position and my shorter-term swing trade position, and I'm my shorter-term swing trade position by 3/4. We still may go higher, as I keep saying. We also may stall at this trend line. Higher, then I'll sell the rest of my position. I have 1/4 of the swing trade left. If we start to get a reversal and start to break the trend line and break the 50-period moving average here in the 60-minute time frame, we start seeing evidence that the top is in at horizontal resistance. Close out the 25% of my position, start a reversal. But let me be clear, I could be premature in closing my position at this trend line. This Bitcoin still may go higher. The Bitcoin ETF here, it still may go higher. But I can see that divergences are developing. Maybe we blow right past this area and get another divergence. It's possible that we go to 111, 110, 111, or as high as 113. Still see the rally continue and just blow. Rising wedges, sometimes they get overthrow moves. A massive gain. I expect volatility to return. I'm locking in some of the gains with my swing trade position, majority of it, by 75%. Risk is we continue to go higher. We very well could. Hanging on to 25% of that, and I still have my core position. I expect that the rally is going to terminate again. As I've said, I think we're completing this 5-leg push higher from minor wave 1. That's not done yet. So we still may go a little higher, but with my shorter term swing trade, very, very pleased with my gains. And I'm not going to cry if we go a little bit higher. That's fine. Still have a 1/4% of my swing trade left, and I still have my core position. again, I do not want to rule out that Bitcoin can't move higher, but this is a trend line I was looking at. This is where horizontal resistance is with the Bitcoin price. There's a possibility that we stall here at this first level of resistance. That's certainly possible, but it is just as possible that the rally continue up towards 110 to 113,000 or so on Bitcoin, those next levels of resistance. So yeah.